Hello viewers, December 5th, Thursday 2024, and again we are going to discuss the major political events, the major conflict zone that are happening all over the globe, and that is impacting the daily lives of all the people that live in this world. So today I think I'm going to start with this conflict which has now flared up again, reignited again in Syria, Levant, and I think in my opinion this is a continuation of the conflict which is happening in Middle East since October 7th. How is it connected? We are going to discuss this in this vlog. But today the first thing we need to understand about the Syrian conflict, and I would like to touch upon it, is the major players which are involved in this conflict. If you look at the slideshow which you can find on the left of this screen, this is a map given by Al Jazeera which shows the major portions of Syria occupied by various players. And I think if you want to understand the conflict itself, you need to understand which players are involved in it. First, the red part, the major part which covers about 60 to 65% of the current Syrian map, is occupied by the Syrian forces, mostly held by Russia. Various Russian air bases are stationed here, various Russian ground forces are stationed here, and Russians are helping out the Syrian government, the legitimate government of Syria. The second major part, if you can look at into it, is the green part. There are two green shades into it. Both part occupies the northwest part of Syria, starting from Idlib province, where the militants, the jihadis, are confined previously, which they now have expanded their zone of influence up to Aleppo, the biggest city in Syria and major battle zone right now. These jihadis, these militants, which is a group known as HTS right now. HTS being Hayatul Tahrir al-Sham, meaning thereby in English, if you want to translate it, as the movement for liberation of Levant. Sham being translated into Levant, the eastern part of the Mediterranean world, known as Levant, is occupied by HTS, which is a rebrand, a refurbished, I would say, a recouped version of Al-Qaeda, an affiliate of Al-Qaeda, previously known as Al-Nusra Front. These militants actually came from Iraq initially, but now they have kind of mixed up with the Turkmens, the Albanese people, Mujahideen from Albanese group, and all these groups basically they have kind of developed into this and morphed into this group called STS. They have been completely rebranded primarily by the Turkish intelligence, by the Turkish military, and you can see on the map just behind the zone of influence lies the Turkish border and some of the parts which are now occupied by the Syrian Free Army, or the Turkish military, which still occupies some parts of Syria. Meaning thereby these militant groups, HTS, on the green side of the northwestern part of Syria in the Idlib province, have a strong, very well knitted connection with the Turkish intelligence, with the Turkish military, and it is reported in the media that they are being completely orchestrated by Ankara, by headquarters in Ankara. The HTS's current leader is Mohammad Gulani, whose whereabouts are somewhere in Idlib province, from which their base is operating, and they have, as you know, as I explained you, that they have a strong relationship with Turkish intelligence. Turkey, more on Turkey later, but Turkey being one of the strongest NATO members, the second biggest military after the US, I would suggest this is a kind of an operation which is conducted by NATO, primarily the Western intelligence, Western agencies, using Turkey as a cat's paw, using these Islamic militants as a cat's paw to destroy Assad's regime. And we knew the West has designs since the start of this millennium to basically dislodge Assad's regime in Syria and basically throw Russian influence out of the Middle East. So that is one of the groups. Second group being the Turkish opposition, Turkish Syrian opposition, or the Turkish occupied region, just north of these militant groups, Islamic militant groups. The third most important factor, first being the HTS, second being the Turkish military itself and its allies in the northwest part of Syria. Third, I think, significant factor is the Kurdish element, which you can see in the map on the eastern part of Syria, the yellow map, the Kurdish dominated area. They are primarily known as the Syrian Democratic Forces. Democratic Forces rings the alarm bell of the American presence, and you guessed it right. Kurdish forces are being supported openly now by the US military, the US Air Force, and by the US Marines. United States is known to have a base there, CIA base and a military base, Pentagon's presence there, and they are attacking continuously the Syrian the Syrian Arab army, the actual legitimate government army supported by Iran and Lebanese resistance. So Kurdish front, this Kurdish influence area, US basically has known to have, the US companies known to have an oil base there also, an oil production facility. ConocoPhillips, the famous oil company of the US, known to have an oil or a gas facility there from which they are operating, from which they are producing oil and gas. And they are known to be secured by these US bases, the US military. This is the third element, and finally we have this alliance of Syrian forces, Assad's regime's forces, Putin's Russian forces, Iran-backed militias, Shia militias from Iraq, and Lebanese resistance. So these are the kind of major players that I wanted to explain, because people do not understand the complexity of this problem. But if you look at it from a pure geopolitical lens, there are major two forces involved. One is the Western-backed forces led by Turkey and the US, using jihadi militant groups as a cat's paw to sow chaos in Syria and to basically destroy Arab regime, so it's the Syrian Arab regime. Another is the forces which are backed by Russia, Iran, Iraq, Lebanese resistance, and Syrian Assad regime itself. So the question is, why has this conflict, which has been dormant since 2016, when Syrian Arab army have defeated these jihadists, these Al-Qaedist regimes, Al-Qaeda backed forces out of Syria and thrown them and confined them to Idlib. Why suddenly now? I think there are two reasons to it. Number one has to do with the ceasefire in Syria, ceasefire in Lebanon. My apologies. Lebanon, the IDF itself was struggling, exhausted, although they had given some killer blows to the Lebanese resistance, but in general it was an understanding among the circles that IDF was exhausted and they were suffering casualties in northern Lebanon. So in southern Lebanon or northern Israel, and that is the reason why they wanted this diversion. And they have come to the Western forces, especially the US and the Turkish forces, using these militants, have come to their aid. They have opened this front so they can divert attention of the Lebanese resistance, of the Syrian Iranian resistance into Syria, and kind of used this new front to release pressure from Lebanon, the front where IDF is struggling in the last 2 or 3 months. That is one of the factors open the new front. The second thing, I think, why they have opened this front now, they believe, I think wrongly, the West in general, Israelis in general, believe that Lebanese resistance has been handicapped being decapitated by the elimination of their leadership, Iran suffering from political and military economic chaos, and Russia being engaged in this war, Syria would be left as a kind of a backwater. And they have used this moment to rearm these Islamic jihadist movement, and these jihadist movements have come to the aid of their allies, meaning thereby the Israelis. The question I think that we need to understand is that why, the question everyone should ask themselves as to why suddenly all these forces that surround Syria, Israelis, Al-Qaeda, Turkey, US, Kurd forces, have one enemy, and that enemy lies in this belt of resistance in Syria, and which connects this axis of resistance all the way from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and towards Iran. Why all these parties, Israelis, these jihadists, these Turkish forces, the US forces, have one enemy in common, and that one enemy is the Assad regime. Because in my opinion, that's my analysis, they want to basically delink this axis all the way from the Mediterranean Sea up towards Gulf. This resistance, this so-called Shia-dominated axis of resistance, and Syria being the critical component of this axis, the West feel that they can dislodge it and can use this moment to basically create a kind of dominance in this region against their foes, against their enemies, arch enemies, the resistance, the axis of resistance. That is my opinion. So that is a kind of my overall take on the Syrian conflict. One thing I just want to talk about more is the role of the Turkey itself. You see, the shameful role that Erdogan has played in the last week or so, and they have again backstabbed Russia, again have backstabbed Syria by pumping these forces, by propping these forces, these jihadists, these most cruel, the most hated people in the world, the most backward people in the world, where they can kill, they can takfir anyone from the Muslim world using their so-called fatwas, using these forces to fulfill their geopolitical designs. Turkey being a very important part of Russian economy, because Turk Stream, which is now the lifeblood now of the Russian economy after the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline. Turkey itself cannot be ignored. So Erdogan actually uses this ace, using this negotiating bargaining chip to basically use this bargaining chip against Russia. Erdogan knows Putin cannot go all the way and to destroy these forces in northern Syria, because they have a vested interest that Turkey is closer to Russia, and they have to do business with Turkey. So with kind of clenched fists, kind of gritted teeth, Russians have to swallow this moment also, because it is really, if you look at it carefully, it is a kind of a backstab on Putin by Erdogan. At this very moment when Ukraine was about to be defeated, Erdogan, using these proxies, have opened a new front just to basically dilute the attention, distract the attention of the Russian forces, of the Putin's forces. And that is what I feel Russia had to maneuver this moment when the United States government is about to change very, very sensitively. So that is my take on all this. I hope you enjoyed it. I wanted to give a kind of an overall picture of what is going on in Levant, what is going on in Syria, what are the major players involved, and this is a developing story. It looks as if the battlefront, the initial gains by these forces, have now come to a stall, but who knows, maybe they would get reinforcements from Turkey again. It looks as if the resistance itself have mobilized forces, mobilized assets to install or to stall this initial gains by this HTS organization, especially in Aleppo, and probably battle lines would be redrawn again with the infusion of more Russian assets, more Iranian assets, as Iran had said that they are willing to send troops to Syria. Iraqi militias are also willing to be sent by the Iraqi government in Syria. That is what I wanted to cover. I hope you enjoyed it. I would appreciate if you can bring your comments so that we can improve our content even further. Thank you so much.